Hello viewers, the Manufacturers Cup is back once more. Now just looking at the schedule, you'll see that I missed the first round last week. We're jumping in at round number 2 at Trial Mountain. But before that I do have to choose my manufacturer. And for this season I'm going to go with Lexus. Now I'm hoping the Lexus is a good car. I think it's been pretty decent in Group 3 recently. So let's take a quick look at the race. 22 laps around Trial Mountain, medium tyres required, there's no real weather, but the main thing here is that there's a minimum of 2 pit stops. There's going to be some element of strategy here. So let's jump in, let's do it. Seeing as this is my first race for Lexus, it was a good idea to jump into some practice and see how the car performs around this circuit. First things first, this circuit has a very difficult opening sector. You really do have to push the limits if you want to get a good lap time, but that of course increases the risk of getting a penalty, as I demonstrate twice in a row here, getting 2 penalties on my 2 opening laps. However, I did manage to get some lap times on the board eventually, with my fastest being a 50.2, hoping to get below the 50 mark, but not with driving like that. That is such an important corner in this circuit because it leads out onto the longest straight, into the best overtaking opportunity, and so you do have to get that left-hander right, which I eventually did. Now, later on that lap, or another lap, I did have a good exit here, eventually getting a solid lap on the boards with a 149.7, and I was pretty happy with that. The car felt decent, and I would say mainly traction on low speed, not the best, but I found myself in some nice space here for the qualifier. And this qualifier, and to be honest guys, this entire race was one of my finest battles, I would say, on Gran Turismo 7. These kind of videos and races come along every now and then where you just get tied into an amazing duel with someone else. Opening lap, setting the pace there 1 second quicker than second place, 50.3. We're expecting some other players to improve, and as we see here, Barry BG, the Bulgarian player, going 3/10 off. Make a mistake there on the run through that left-hander once more, getting myself a penalty. After serving it, I go back to the pit lane, get some fresh tyres for my second attempt at lap. Moving out of the way of some of these cars coming through. Eventually finding myself at the beginning of my qualifying lap. We're going to go and try and improve on the 50.3. I think there is possibly a 49 in it if I can hook it up completely. Of course, there's tyre wear in this session compared to the time trial practice I was doing earlier, so my time should be slower theoretically. Coming through into this middle sector, the Lexus feels nice. Take a look at the gap. Barry BG goes a little bit closer, within 1/10, 0.096 away. So I'm seeing that on the board. I know that this guy is getting closer and closer, and therefore I really do need to improve. That was a nice exit there onto the back straight. Let's take a look at the big braking zone here. Looking for that yellow sign on the right hand side. Carrying the speed through the turn onto the power quite early. You've got nice banking there. Quite wide actually as well. So 2/10 up on the purple lap. So I should theoretically go quicker here if I can have a good final sector off the power and back on it down the hill. This is a difficult corner, this left-hander. I've always struggled with this one. Let the car breathe. Third gear for better traction, as I said earlier. This car doesn't seem the best on slow speed traction. This guy kind of moved in the way slightly. I didn't know what he was doing, so I got slightly distracted there and therefore go a little bit wide of the apex. Through the final turn, it was a good lap. I didn't know if I'd lost too much time there with that incident there with the driver on the final corner, but I did improve, 50.1, back to a 3/10 margin to Barry BG there. So I had one more attempt here, luckily, to go for a lap. My tyres were a little bit more worn, but I could still at least try and see if I can improve again. And we await Barry BG's response, and there it is, 0.036 behind. Incredibly close. I am 1/10 up on my lap though, and so we do have a chance of getting a 49. And of course I'm assuming here that Barry BG is also improving at the same time, so that was my concern. But however, through here I really messed it up. You see I'm disappointed, and that is not going to be an improvement, so I'm going to have to wait anxiously to see if I'm on pole position. And thankfully, after the session ended, with the time remaining ticking down, Barry BG did not improve. And so I remained on pole position, as we can see here. So this is going to tee up a incredibly close battle between the two of us in a really, really good race. Let's go for 22 laps around Trial Mountain. Lexus versus Porsche. And Super GT versus Barry BG. The battle we've all been waiting for, of course. So we roll away from the grid. Of course, with the rolling grid, it's quite spread out at the beginning. So we're just going to try to settle into this race nicely and ideally try to pull away. As we round the tunnel at the beginning, we are going to ride on board with Barry BG at some points of this race. The Porsche appears to be a strong car at the moment in the game. There's no question about that. In Group 3, I would say that it has very good traction, and it seems to be a very popular choice right now in Group 3 races. Perhaps not in this week's daily race, which is more of a Supra and Genesis race, but Porsche pretty much has always been a strong contender. As you can see here on this opening lap, I am actually putting a nice little gap here, 7/10 the margin, so we're nice and comfortable. That's a solid gap, I would say, one that the car behind won't be able to overtake you from unless they really pull off dive bomb of the millennium, but that's not going to happen here. So end of lap 1, we're in a good scenario here. I was hoping to have pulled away maybe a little bit, but as we saw in qualifying, we were actually incredibly evenly matched, and that proved to be the case also in the race. And so we crossed the line, the gap is 0.3 of a second. This guy is very much on me. I'm not going to be able to escape him very easily at all, especially around Trial Mountain with the long straights. And coming up the hill, lap 2, he goes to the outside. I go defensive into the tunnel. I was very sure that I wanted to defend this position. It's kind of a weird decision to have to make on a long race. Do you allow the car through and just sit in the slipstream and try to create a gap with him and go with him, work together and work against everyone else? Or do I just defend my position and potentially lose a lot of time and draw more people into the battle? I decided that I was going to defend the position and just not let him through at all. Just try to do it in such a way that I didn't lose too much time. You might have noticed there the tyre wear. A bit of concern about tyre wear. I didn't really know exactly how this car would wear out his tyres. So I moved the bikes all the way to the back to protect the fronts. He goes for this move, and that's just a warning sign that I think the Porsche was not as quick as the Lexus on the straight. But I do think it was good on the brakes. So that's something to just note down, I suppose, as we build a profile of this guy, how his strengths are, how his weaknesses are, which parts of the track he's good on, and which parts of the track he's not so good on. Coming down into the final chicane, end of lap 2, he's trying to kind of put me off the line, but I'm not really looking backwards too much. On the exit of the final corner, onto the straight, you see just how good the traction is on the Porsche. He's right on my tail now. And at this point I thought, right, I'm just going to stick to the left, I'm going to go defensive. Actually gives me the bump draft, interestingly. So with that momentum, I then go back to the racing line, knowing that he won't really have enough momentum to go back through. Okay, he's perhaps willing to work with me, but I'm still going to cover the inside should that scenario arise. Should he get close enough to go for the pass, I'm still going to block, or defend, should we say. Make sure they can't go through. End of lap 3, let's move this forward a little bit. Coming down towards the final chicane again, bit of a gap this time. I was very worried about his traction coming out this final corner. That Porsche is so good at putting down its power, and I couldn't quite do the same coming out of here. I didn't really have the confidence to push against that wall. You see just how close he is. There's not much you can do about that other than just cover the left hand side and just defend. This time he doesn't go for the bump draft, he actually goes to the right hand side, so he shows more intent that he's going to go for the overtake. However, I've covered it off. Then we go through the first sector, as we spoke about at the beginning of the video. It's difficult to go through there without getting a penalty, so you have to be super careful about how you enter that one, especially in a 22 lap race, going through that sequence of the track 22 different times it's, you know, many opportunities to get a penalty. So this is lap 4 now, and I'm just beginning to pull clear slightly. It was quite clear that he was very strong on the opening couple of laps of this stint. I just begin to sense maybe that could be changing, and I do think that his exit out of that left-hander onto this straight wasn't quite as good as mine. He's good on the brakes into that corner though, and so very much swings and roundabouts. We're going to move from lap 4 to lap 6. A couple of laps go by with a fairly static gap, but by this point you can see the gap actually opens up slightly. It's about 7-8 tenths, so the gap is definitely a bit bigger than it has been. He's kind of outside of that overtaking range, and I'm just looking back there, seeing him at that distance, thinking, okay, I'm feeling comfortable now. I don't really have to defend at all. Feeling a bit more comfortable. So it's quite clear to me that the Porsche are good at the opening part of the lap, of the stint, sorry, and then maybe not so much later on. Let's take a look at the comparison of tyre wear. I'm on the left, he's on the right. It's quite close, although I would say that my tyres are comparatively better, slightly better, not a huge difference, but that's a good sign. I actually thought the Porsche would be better on tyres overall, so I didn't really know. You know, I've not really done a direct Lexus versus Porsche comparison of late, so I didn't really have exact knowledge of that. So I was just assuming the Porsche would be better because it usually is. But anyway, exit of that corner, lap 7, he actually pulls off to the pit lane and goes in to change his tyres for the first time. I wanted to do 8 laps on my opening stint, Barry BG going for 7, and then of course we are just continuing this lap. So he has the fresh tyres, he has the possibility of the undercut here, whilst I'm on mostly worn tyres, he's got the fresh tyres, and therefore there's a good chance that he's going to get past me here. I was just wondering where he was on the track. He's in 5th, and there he is. I was just looking on the map during the straight, and he's very much in clear air, as we can see here. I was hoping that maybe he would come out in traffic, which could slow him down, but that didn't happen. So he had pretty much a free run to put the hammer down and try to put down a very good lap. Whereas I was on, well, I still had clear air, but I did not have the best tyres. End of lap 8 then, putting into the pit lane, and there, across the line, the dotted line, I wasn't sure if that was a penalty. I've not really raced around Trial Mountain that much where I have to do a pit stop. And I was wondering, is that a penalty? I really thought it was. We'll find out in a moment if it is, because that could be a race ruiner and not the place where I was expecting to get a penalty. Thankfully, it wasn't a penalty. I definitely crossed the line, and normally the game is very strict. But as you can see, Barry BG goes through. So with that different strategy, going for the pit stop 1 lap earlier, he gets the jump. So he was about a second behind, now about a second in front. And just a quick chat on the strategy, I suppose. It's a 2 pit stop race. You have to do 2 pit stops. It's 22 laps. So roughly, it's 2 7-lap stints and an 8-lap stint. And obviously the 7-lap stints are a bit easier because you can push a little bit more. You don't have to do as many laps. So I've got my bad stint out of the way. I've done my 8-lapper. He hasn't. So he does have the advantage in track position, but not in strategy. And something I noted here, I was 1.2-ish seconds behind at the beginning of the straight, and then under 0.9 or under 1 second at the end of it, showing me that the Lexus is good in the straight line. I think I gain about a tenth usually, and there was a faint whiff of slipstream as well. And so this battle is just brewing up now. It's a very strategic one as well as just pure consistency and pace. Now through here, I'm going to make a mistake, kind of like I did in the qualifying session, and the gap opens up immediately to 1.5, 1.6. That was very worrying. We saw on the first stint, the Porsche was really quick out of the gate on the first sort of 3 laps. And so I'm not there now to be able to slow him down on those 3 laps. He's just kind of in free air, putting the hammer down and opening up that gap. And there's nothing I can really do about it. I'm just trying to be as consistent as possible. But he's driving incredibly smoothly. The gap opens up here to pretty much its biggest extent, 2.2, 2.3 seconds. And he's driving really well, and I don't really have an answer at this point in the race. I was kind of worried by this point, I must say. I thought, you know, he's got past, and there's not much I can do to reel him in. The main factor in my favour, I suppose, is that of the strategy. I was hoping that the tyres would come back to me, and not so much for him. We can see at the end of the first stint, he did drop off slightly by a few tenths, maybe a second or so. So I was just monitoring the gap here. 2.3 was its biggest extent. It is slightly coming down. So through this sector, lap 12, we're about halfway through the stint, maybe approaching lap 14 or 15. That's where we're going to go in for that second stop. We're on lap 12 now. So through here, the gap comes down to 1.9. So we've just gained we've gained about 0.4, 0.5 seconds. And by the end of the lap, it's down to 1.6, 1.5, the gap. He's just visually closer. I can see that I'm gaining now. And so it's a very topsy-turvy race. He gained a lot of time at the beginning of the stint. I'm going to gain it back. And let's take a look at the comparison of the tyres. As I've got a massive tyre advantage now, I would say. Quite significant, especially on the right-hand side. The side that gets more abuse around Trial Mountain. So now I just have to really utilise my extra grip for the next couple of laps. I'm not sure exactly when he's going to come in. He did 7 laps on the first stint. He still has to do an 8-lap stint at some point. It could be now, it could be at the end. If he was sensible, he'd probably do it now. You don't really want to end on the 8-lap stint. You probably don't anyway. And I'm definitely getting closer. This is definitely teeing up for a very good battle. I really wanted to get past him before the pit stop. I think that just helps quite a lot. Psychologically, to get in front. Hey, look, I'm still in this race. I'm in front. I'm the faster car here. Also, I think just by getting the overtake done, rather than being 0.5 behind, you get immediately 0.5 in front. And so that swing of about a second can be quite important. Either side of a pit stop. So lap 14 now, and this is where I'm just beginning to size him up for a move. Through here, we said that he's not so strong on this left-hander. I just had to come off the throttle there slightly, but I do have the slipstream now and the better straight line speed of the Lexus. So are we able to get this move done? It's a long straight. It goes on seemingly forever. It has been extended from the previous games. And so here, not quite close enough to go for the move, but here he actually makes a mistake through the apex, clattering into the wall on the inside, actually going to the back of him. So momentarily, bit of contact between the two of us, no damage done though. But that is a good sign. I just know that I have to get a little bit closer, and I could pull off that move on the following lap. But he's still driving really well. He's not making any obvious errors. Neither of us have got a penalty at this point. So we've driven nearly 14 laps without a single penalty, which in itself is quite good going. And he's not really giving me anything to... any sort of free lifelines, if you like. Exit of the final corner, lap 14. He doesn't go into the pit lane this lap, obviously. And so we're both presumably going to pit at the end of this lap. And so that's why I'm targeting this lap as such an important one. I want to get through before we both go in to the pit lane. So coming through up the hill, this sector here is so important. This is the one that has to go right up behind him now, 0.2 the gap. But through here, this sequence here has to go right for me, then I'll have the chance on that back straight. It's moments like this and sectors like this where the race can be decided. You have to be really, really focused here in these moments. So he has really good traction through that sequence. He's a bit wide, but I'm definitely closer this time around. I didn't have to back off the throttle, which is really crucial in terms of your speed onto the straight. If you can do it smoothly without coming off the power on the exit, then that is a lot better. Getting so much closer now, and it's almost exponential, the speed you gain as you get closer. We're going to go for the move. It's quite a wide corner. He leaves the space, and we're side by side on the exit. And it's a drag race up the hill. And as we go through the chicane at the top of the hill, I am just about able to get in front. Such a close overtake. I mean, any further back and that was not possible. I did just enough to be able to achieve that there. And now we are going to peel to the left-hand side. Not going to cross the line this time around, even though it didn't matter previously. And we are both going to change tyres on the same lap to set up a final stint battle from here to the end. No one else pretty much featuring at all, just the two of us. It's a really, really intense one. 28 minutes on the clock already, but we've still got another 7 laps left to go. He's very much on my tail. Look at this, right on me as we exit the pit lane. So I'm immediately on the back foot, making sure that he does not go through. We're actually in second and third at the moment. The guy in the lead has not pitted and presumably will do so at the end of this lap. My consideration here is that if I catch him too soon, I could potentially get slowed down, and that might not be good for me. But let's see what happens. That's a problem for later on in the lap. And this is a crucial moment here. Onto the back straight once again. I'm going to try and get a good exit, and I think this is saving me in this race so far. Just that corner, I practiced it, and I made sure that I got it right in the qualifying and the practice session. And it is saving me because it's just opening up that gap onto the straight. He's not quite close enough to get the slipstream, or a good amount of slipstream. The Porsche, I think, needs to be a lot closer to the Lexus in order to benefit. And so I'm relatively safe going into that braking zone there. And I'm not really making any mistakes as he would wish. So as much as he wasn't really making mistakes and getting penalties, likewise for me, I wasn't really making any mistakes or getting any penalties. I suppose the only mistake was on this corner here at the just after the first pit stop. Now thankfully we do catch up with this guy. He does peel over to the left hand side, pulls in, and so doesn't actually interfere with the fight at all. And so we kind of resume the 1v1 that we were in. Now Barry BG has the fastest lap of the race. I'm going to try and change that sometime soon. Look at that, right up against the wall. We are both pushing incredibly hard here to win this race. 6 laps left to go in the race. 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. That is 6 laps. Yes, I am right about that. That is some quick maths for you. Through here, I was really actually quite committed and actually quite happy with the consistency through that first chicane. And I mean, me going 17 laps now through that sequence of the track without getting a penalty, I mean that is a miracle. Miracles have happened today, guys. And they do happen. Miracles do happen. I mean, Peter Bonington, Lewis Hamilton's engineer, has said it multiple times. The miracles do happen, mate. And they are happening right now. It is just incredible to witness. Through the back straight, or onto the back straight, the gap just opening up slightly. Now, traditionally in this race, the Porsche has been quick on the opening laps, but not so much this time around. Maybe the pressure getting to him, I don't really know. I don't know why he's a little bit slower there, but I do set the fastest lap, and it's always nice to put your name up in lights on the screen, just to serve as a little bit of a reminder to the other guy that, you know what, I'm actually quicker. So just bear that in mind. If there's any psychological wins you can have, then you might as well try and win them. Now he gets the penalty there through the first apex of lap 18. And by this point, I look behind, I see it. I thought, oh, okay, wow, okay. I just know now that that is going to open up the gap as we come through the final corner of this lap, where the penalty line is. It really does hurt you here at Trial Mountain. You only stop for 0.5 seconds, but the momentum carries all the way up the straight, and so that gap opens up massively to over a second, at 1.5. And so I'm very much in clear air now, and not having to look back at all. 1.6 the gap. I know now that I can just kind of, I can't really cruise. I can't just take my foot off the gas, really. It's 1.6. I know that he can't overtake me from this distance, but I still have to be considered. If he starts reeling me back in at the end of this race, let's say towards lap 21, 22, he's still got a chance of overtaking. So I just want this gap to be at least about 2 seconds, which it is now. That'd be nice to kind of keep it around that area. We're going to skip to lap 21. The gap by this point is 2.3. a gap I can be happy with only 1 lap left to go after this one. So the only thing that can really ruin my race now is a penalty or, you know, some sort of really stupid mistake. I suppose the benefit of having a gap is that you can afford to play it safe, which the Porsche here cannot. And he's pushed a little bit too hard there. It's a 0.5 second penalty for the collision with the wall. It's quite a harsh one. You don't really gain anything from doing that, but that is going to kind of seal his fate. And now I can just drive incredibly safely through this final lap. So we're just going to take off 5% through that first sequence of corners there. Just make sure we don't really go too close to the track limits. And with the final sector looming, we can just say that this was an incredible battle. Really, really tense throughout. I genuinely, for a lot of it, didn't think I was going to win it. There are moments where I questioned if I was able to win it. I think I just did everything right. I was confident throughout the race that I could do it. I made the right decisions throughout, and I'm really happy to say that miracles do happen, mate. Come on, what a race. Can't believe that. No penalties at all, 1 half mistake, but pretty much a faultless win there. And a really, really good battle with Barry BG won there. Amazing stuff. Really, really enjoyed that. Clearly the Porsche is the strong car in this race, finishing 2nd, 3rd, 4th and 5th. So I think I did a good job there to get the RCF to the front. So 262 points earned there. I do need to get my ratings up because I should be in, I think, 300 point lobbies, maybe around about there. So as good as that win is, let's get that driver rating up. And yeah, definitely, that was a phenomenal race. Thanks for the race. That was a good race. Amazing stuff.